Attendees of the Conservative Political Action Conference chose Vice President J.D. Vance as their leading contender for the 2028 GOP presidential nomination. CPAC's annual straw poll showed that 61% of the more than 1,000 people surveyed selected Vance as the top choice to 2028 presidential nomination, far ahead of his closest competitors. Only 12% viewed Steve Bannon, a former aide to President Donald Trump, as the next GOP nominee, and 7% selected Governor Ron DeSantis. Both Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Representative Elise Stefanik received 3% of support. Donald Trump Jr., the president's son, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, and former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy all gathered 2% support. Vance addressed the CPAC crowd on Thursday morning, where he received a standing ovation for defending his controversial remarks at the Munich Security Conference during his first international trip as vice president last week. "I will take a standing ovation for a speech I already gave," Vance joked. The speech in Germany stunned European allies who took umbrage with Vance's remarks, chastising the European nations over free speech rights and mass migration problems. As Vance was in Europe, Trump made headlines for declining to say the vice president was his successor during an interview with Fox News' Bret Baier. So I was going to point out that this is not interesting because Vance got picked the most out of anyone. I think it's pretty obvious whenever you have a vice president and the president is like within their own party, people are going to gravitate towards the VP as the natural heir apparent. What is interesting, though, are the other results. I can't remember the last time anyone talked about Bannon or what he was doing, right? Because he got fired from Trump's first administration about a quarter of the way through, and then after that was just sort of lurking in the shadows. And now I'm seeing a poll where he's coming in second place as the 2028 Republican nominee. What? And he's coming in second place by a pretty large margin. I mean, you got DeSantis with 7%, so he's like 5 points down. And the DeSantis thing is interesting too, because there's always this belief in the GOP of like, oh man, once you stray from Trump, in the cold, we're done with you. We're sick of it. That's why people are saying, Haley's career is over, Pence's career is over. But what DeSantis did that I find kind of interesting is he got out right after Iowa and endorsed Trump, and has basically been his lapdog again ever since those polls first showed him having a chance of dethroning him, all throughout like 2022 and whatnot. So he's someone who could realistically come back from that supposed betrayal of their dear leader. What I find also kind of funny is Rubio at what was it, 3% with Stefanik. And how comedic is that? A guy who, there was a time where Rubio was talked about as Romney's VP, right? A possible VP choice for Trump in 2016, a leading candidate for the Republican nomination that year prior to Trump getting in. It's like, one of the few people that won a state during that primary. And for the last, damn near 10 years almost, he has been another Trump stooge. He's been afraid to, he has kissed the ring. He's been afraid to really push him in any regards. He has entirely embraced him. And I guess his reward was becoming, Secretary of State. But even if there's a record of secretaries of state in the very early in American history running for president, with Jefferson and, Monroe, for example, and Quincy Adams, it's becoming more rare for cabinet secretaries to be able to mount successful White House bids. And even if I think Rubio is a more qualified person to be president than Vance, do I really see the GOP nominating a person of minority as their presidential candidate in 4 years? I don't. That's the truth. So the other options are also a little amusing too. I guess I can't help but think about how all these people just they want so badly to get Trump's approval, and they defend him on everything. And they, in a presidential poll, they're only coming in at 2%, 1%, because people, they like Trump, but they really can't stand the rest of these, clowns. So it's going to be really fascinating when we get to like 2026, 27, more so 27, when you get to that period to see what the Republicans look like with their, singular unifying leading figure no longer able to run for president. Um, because as things are current, like I know that Vance, won this thing pretty overwhelmingly, but again, he's only been VP for a month. A lot of these other people haven't run for president at all or in years, so they're not at the top of the forefront of people's minds. It's also a matter of just name recognition. Like a lot of people just don't know who some of these others are. But when we get to early 2027, you're going to start to see what I think will be a GOP civil war over who's going to be the party's next nominee. I don't think Vance has it as locked down as this poll makes it seem. Could be wrong, but just the way that they were, and how there is a tendency, again, when people are with Trump, they like him. If they turn a little bit or whatever, it's kind of very, honestly, it sort of reminds me. I know a lot of people won't get this historical comparison, and I'd hate to because this is not how they were back in the 50s, but it kind of reminds me of how the GOP, when they had Eisenhower as their nominee in 52 and 56, they were very unified, they were very popular, they won these presidential elections overwhelmingly. But there was this concern that the party, for like 1960 with Nixon and was that Rockefeller, who, like a skirmish, like who's going to be Eisenhower's heir apparent, who's going to take over, because his popularity, while high, which Trump has never had, but his popularity is like analogous with the GOP, was not transferred to his VP, who was much younger and just not as unifying of a figure as the president at the time was. So I guess that's kind of where I see like a parallel. But yeah, it's going to be a really interesting primary when we eventually get to it.